So in the end, you're always striving to achieve. You may not get exactly where you wanted to go or get everything done that you wanted to get done. But the way I looked at it, as long as you left the department that you were in charge of in better condition and state than when you inherited it, when you were assigned to it, then you achieve some level of success.
What does it really take to become an executive in an organization?
Don't make excuses. Don't be a victim.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to yet another episode of the RK Leadership Podcast, where we help empower tomorrow's leaders through sharing of knowledge, experience, and inspiring stories. I'm your host, Rob Cameronport, and my very special guest today is none other than Greg Corrali. Here's a short list of some of the positions Greg has held over his illustrious career. He was the VP of Operations and Construction Maintenance at ComEd in Chicago, SVP of Operations, Energy Delivery, and Smart Meter Operations at PG&E in California. He was the EVP and COO of Hydro One, where I met Greg here in Ontario, Canada, and he's currently the CEO of Corrali Consulting Group. So before we start, I'd like to thank you very much, Greg, for being on my podcast today and joining us to share your inspiring stories and experience with the folks out there. Thank you very much, and welcome to the RK Leadership Podcast.
It's so great connecting again, Rob. I really want to thank you for having me. This is awesome.
Thank you so much. So, Greg, why don't we get right into it? Can you walk us through your journey quickly and tell us some of the challenges that you had to overcome to get to where you're at today, please?
Wow, that's wide open. When you're first starting out as a college grad, and I got my engineering degree back in 1986, a long time ago, you're not necessarily sure of where you want to go with your career, right? Or what you want to get out of it. All I know was I wanted to be an engineer and go add value. And I ended up joining the utility industry. And, fast forward, I spent 35 years in the utility industry working for 4 companies.
Wow.
And what was great about it is I traveled the most of North America, right? I grew up in New Jersey. I spent most of my life there, 35 years, worked for one company there for 15 years, PSE&G in New Jersey. Then I moved to Chicago, spent 8 years there, loved Chicago, loved that area, the Midwest. And then I moved to California. On my high school yearbook blurb, the last thing it says is California dreaming. And when I got the opportunity to go to California, I told my wife, I said, look, I know we just built this new house, but I got this opportunity, honey. We got to go. So we did, and I spent 8 years in California, and it was in the Bay Area, and it was fantastic. And then ultimately, it led to Hydro One, Canada. I never thought I'd go to Canada to work.
Yes.
In fact, when the recruiter called me and said, "Hey, we got this opportunity up here in Toronto," I said, "Toronto that's Canada, right?" I know it's right over the border, but my career culminated at Hydro One, and it couldn't have been a better place. I loved working there. I have such fond memories. I have fond memories of all of my time, right? And it was a lot of, as you said in your question, it certainly wasn't easy. Although I maybe sound exciting and easy in every single company, in every situation, in every job that I had. I bet you I had, I don't know, somewhere between 15 and 20 individual jobs right during those almost 35 years. There were trials and tribulations in every one of them. Yeah, there were successes, but you always have people issues. You have issues with the people who work for you. You have issues with your boss that you try to work through. You have projects that the company has given you responsibility for, and they're challenging, right? Nothing's easy about it. And you're trying to acquire resources or figure out where do they want me to go with this project, et cetera. So in every one of those jobs, in all of those companies, there were successes, there were some failures, there was a lot of learning along the way, and lots of trials and tribulations, lots of challenges. And, I'm from Jersey, so I like to think I'm tough and that I've got this will to succeed, and nothing can keep me from achieving what it is my intended purpose was. So in the end, you're always striving to achieve. You may not get exactly where you wanted to go or get everything done that you wanted to get done. But the way I looked at it, as long as you left the department that you were in charge of in better condition, in a
Right.
better state than when you inherited it, when you were assigned to it, then you achieve some level of success.
Awesome. That's great, Greg, and that's absolutely right. So I want you to think about again going back all those years to all these positions that you've had. What was the single biggest challenge that you faced, and how did you overcome that?
Hmm. Single biggest challenge. Probably the culture change for me. I was moving from one company to the next, all across the United States, and then ultimately up to Canada.
Mhm.
Well, the United States is huge, right? And Canada's a different country from the US, right? So every move I made, there was a new culture that I was going to. And I can tell you the first time I left the company in New Jersey and went to Chicago, I got caught in the first 6 months talking about a lot of the things the way we used to do it back here,
Yes.
right? And this is the way we did it here. And you know what? The people that I worked with in Chicago, they didn't want to hear that. They didn't like that at all. Hey, you're not in Jersey anymore. You're in Chicago. Here's the culture. Here's the way we do things here, right? And that's what culture is, the way we get things done here. So it was an important lesson, very valuable, adapting to that culture in that different geography. And it was only, several hundred miles away, but it was a totally different way of doing business and a different culture and a different way of getting things done. Same thing when I moved to California. Same thing when I moved to Toronto at Hydro One. The culture is different. So I learned, understand early on what that culture is. How does the organization get things done? And then adapt to it. Don't push your agenda onto them. Meet the people in the culture where they're at, and then pull them along with you on where you think you need to go or where the company or the department need to go in order to achieve success.
Awesome. So speaking of culture, I have a question around that as well for you, Greg. Now, as you know, culture is actually one of the probably the toughest things to change in an organization, especially in an organization that's been around for a long time. How do you as a leader come in and change a culture that's been the same for many years? Like, what's your strategy around that?
Yeah. One of the I was just reviewing some material that I wrote a couple of years back on moving to a new department within a company or moving to a new company in totality, right? And encountering a different culture. Um, and I used this tool once I made that first move to Chicago. I used this tool in every position that I ever went to successively, right? Even if I stayed within the same company, if I changed jobs, I employed the use of this tool, and it's a 100-day plan.
Hmm.
That's what it is. It's a 100-day plan. So it's important that as a new leader, you come in, everybody anticipates, oh, who's the new boss? What are they like? What are they going to do differently? Are things going to change? Are they going to stay the same, et cetera? Well, in order to gain followership, right, as a leader, you want to influence people. You want them to kind of follow you where you think the department and the company needs to go. And that's based on the goals of the company, right? And where the company sees itself in 5, 10, 15 years down the road. Well, you need to build credibility early on as a leader, right? You want to have your team develop confidence in you, that you're knowledgeable, you've got some talents and skills, you've got experience that's valuable, that you care about them.
Hmm.
That's critical, right? It's not it's not all about you. You can't achieve anything on your own.
That's right.
You need your team, right? They're the ones who are going to execute for you every single day. What you get done in your department that you lead or your company is all dependent on the wins or losses, right? The things that people get done or don't get done every day of your direct reports, the people who work for you and the people who work for them. So you're trying to inspire them, you're trying to build credibility, influence them, and you do that with your experience, showing care and concern for them, talking to them, developing a relationship with them, right? What are your goals? Where do you want to go? And helping them get there, right? And you're not doing that just for yourself, right? To get something out of it, right? For some ulterior motive. You're doing it because you genuinely care about people, right?
That's right.
And when you, right? Because you know what it's like when someone helped you to be successful. You want to help somebody else.
Yep.
So when they see that you genuinely care about them, then right, they're going to be more influenced by you. They're going to tend to follow you, right? Hey, this person's trying to help me out here. He or she could help me in my career. So you want to build credibility. You want to solve some problems early on, some wins, as I say, secure early wins. You know, you come into a new department, a new company, and they say, hey, Greg, we've had this problem now for a couple of years, and here it is. And what do you think about it? And how can you help us, right? When you first talk to employees, you might go on a little bit of a tour, a listening tour, and you're going to hear all kinds of things. And you'll start to pick up on things and you'll say, hey, I ran into that before. I might be able to help them with that. If I can solve that problem that they see as a big issue, that'll build me lots of credibility, right?
That's right.
And if you solve that problem, they're going to say, hey, he helped us out. Maybe if we give him this one, maybe he can help us out with that problem as well. Now, you're not going to do it all on your own. Maybe you even say, hey, look, I like your idea. Would you be willing to lead that effort to change that or to solve that issue or be part of a team? I'll give you the support. I'll give you the direction. I believe in where you want to go with it. And I believe it needs to be fixed. What do you say? Right. And now you're engaging them in the process as well. So you're engaging employees all along the way. So you want to build credibility. You want to engage employees. You want to listen and learn from them. And I think that helps you then adapt to the culture. They see you not as an external party anymore. They see you as, hey, this person's really genuinely interested in us, in the department, helping us, moving things forward, builds credibility, and all of a sudden, you're gaining followership, right? And that's how you can kind of adapt to the culture.
That's right. Awesome. That's excellent, Greg. Now, I know you've experienced this, and I want to ask you this question again around culture. When you're working with a big organization in a unionized environment and a unionized culture that's embedded into the system, how do you deal with those challenges when you are trying to do something good and when you are trying to connect with people, but they see you as, again, it becomes like an us versus them mentality. How do you deal with that?
So all four companies that I worked at were union environments, right? And I was always in management in every one of those, right? And theoretically, it's almost an adversarial relationship, right? Management and union,
Yes.
but it doesn't have to be.
Mhm.
So I didn't start out this way. I got to tell you, at my first company, right? I had some battles with the union leadership, right? Because they believed in different things than I did about how to run the business, right?
That's
And
right.
I was naive when I was first starting out, right? I didn't really know the political power that they had. So I've learned over the years, and it's funny, you fast forward, when I was in California and I had accepted the job to come to Hydro One, one of the first things I did is I called the union presidents in Toronto of the unions at Hydro One. And I introduced myself, talked to them over the phone, introduced myself, told them a little bit about me and what they can expect, asked them about them. Hey, what can I expect with you? I learned, right? You got to build relationships. Even though you might have this at times adversarial relationship or you have different interests, right? Management may have a different interest than where the union is going in this particular on this particular topic. You got to build a relationship. They're human. You want to have a relationship with them. You want to be able to break bread, have a meal, discuss business issues, and to professionally either agree or disagree.
Right.
And so what? You don't see eye to eye on everything, right? In some ways, you're gonna in management, you're gonna pursue your agenda. If the union leadership maybe thinks you're wrong about it, then there's a process to follow, right? They'll file the grievance, follow the grievance procedure and file a grievance, and maybe it'll end up in arbitration and whatnot. But many times you can work things out. Now that's the union leadership aspect of things and the political nature of it. I love working with union employees, the employees themselves, because my interest is the same. They want the same things that you want as a manager
That's
or
right.
leader. They want to be fulfilled in their job, make a good living, right? Support a good family at home. They want to feel proud of the company they work for. I mean, if you're in management or union, don't you want to wear the company's logo on your sleeve and be proud of the company you work for, and have customers think highly of you as well? So you want to you want to do well for the company. You want to deliver for customers so they have a positive impression of the company. So I think whether you're a union employee or a management employee, many of your interests are aligned. You just have different jobs, right? One is a specialty skill that they were trained for. Another, right, is governance and management and leadership. Those folks that are in management, and they have a different skill set to offer. But I think when it comes down to brass tacks, a lot of their interests are aligned. And at times you'll disagree, so you professionally disagree.
That's right. Absolutely right, Greg. And that's a great way to put it. And I think, for me, that's one thing I learned is building those relationships and building it earlier on, because you can butt heads all you want. You're not going to achieve anything. But I think if you actually work together, you can achieve a lot more. And I love the logo piece because you all work for the same company. We all wear the same logo, right? So if you're not proud to be wearing that, I think you shouldn't be even working there to begin with, right?
Can I share a quick story?
Absolutely, go for it.
So when I first joined the company in Chicago, early on, my neighbor invited me to a Chicago Cubs game,
Nice.
and my son and I went, and we were with him and his son. And before the game started, they shot off some fireworks, right? And they said, big on the big screen, it said fireworks sponsored by Commonwealth Edison, and the whole crowd started booing, booing. That's when it really hit me. Now I was only with the company for a couple months. What I realized was how devastating the outages they had the prior summer. They had major electrical outages in the city of Chicago for a couple of days on the hottest weekend of the year back in 1999. And it left like an indelible mark
Yeah.
on customers. And that when that crowd started booing, my son and I mean, we looked at each other, right? And how embarrassed I was, right? And my neighbor's looking at me, and now he knows I work for the company. However, what I will say is this: that inspired me.
Mm.
I said, I want to work for a company that I'm proud of. And although those customers in the stands, right, and those people in the public that had the negative impression they did, I want that to change. And I will tell you, I stayed with the company for 8 years. I loved every minute of it, and we worked hard to change from that kind of impression to a more positive one. It's not perfect. It's never perfect, right?
That's
But
right.
I think it changed dramatically in the work that we did to improve reliability, electrical reliability for customers, public safety, reduce costs, et cetera, to where they have a different impression of the company today than they did then, right? But it was inspiring because I felt like that is not where I want to be, right? I mean, I want to be totally 180 degrees from that. I want customers to be cheering for us, you
That's
know?
right. Absolutely. And it's great to get into those points where you do have a big challenge and you gotta, build something and do something different with the company. So that's a great story. And thanks for sharing that, Greg. Now, I wanna I wanna ask you, since you've been, an executive at many places, what does it really take to become an executive in an organization?
Okay. Well, I guess in short, I would say it's important. And people might think these items are superficial. You got to look like one. got to act like one,
Mm.
and you got to perform like one, right? So it's funny, right? Everyone's heard the term dress for success.
Yes.
When you become an executive, people are looking at you as an executive. And
Mm.
if you become an executive in the company that you currently work for, right? You can either do that or you can become one in another company, right? But say you're in the you're promoted from within, and you become an executive. My advice would be dress differently the first day you come in as an executive than you did the day before.
Mm.
You want people to notice that things have changed, that things are different, that you take the job seriously. You're an executive, you have an increased responsibilities and accountabilities, and you want to put on a good, positive impression for employees, for senior executives, the board of directors, customers, et cetera. You're recognizing the role, right? So that's the key point. Recognize the role you're in as an executive. And it's not just dress for it, right? It's you may act differently. You have to adjust to the role. Don't do the executive job like you did your previous job.
Mm.
It's a mindset shift. I was just reviewing something that I wrote on this a couple of years back. Understand the mindset shift of the role you came from to the new one that you're in. Now you have to think like an executive. It doesn't mean you all of a sudden need to be high and mighty. That's not what I'm talking about, right? It's about what are my new job responsibilities? Take them seriously. I just inherited probably many more employees than I had. They are now my responsibility. Their health, their safety, their well-being, the work that their productivity, the work that they execute every day, how they deliver for customers, and take that seriously. You also have to adjust from what I would call more of a tactical level to a strategic level, right? You're higher up in the organization as an executive, so now you have to think more strategically. Think bigger picture. Have a broader perspective, not minute on the department, right? Maybe now you've got a bigger department and that's certainly your focus. You need to deliver for the organization. But then you have to say, all right, how does this department fit into the whole company now?
Mm.
And what is our role to play? How can we complement other departments and teams within the company? So one of the things you really need to do is sit down with your senior executive, whether it's the CEO or somebody else in the C-suite or whatnot, and say, what are your expectations of
Mm.
me in this department? How do you see this department fitting in or contributing to the overall company? Because at times, why am I sharing this? At times, you always want to do what's best for your department, right? And make it a shining example of success.
That's
But
right.
sometimes the organization might ask you to do something different than what you intend to do for the greater good of the company.
Mm.
They may say, hey, the priority right now is maybe it's customer satisfaction. We really need to build customer credibility. It's like my example going back to Chicago, right? We
That's right.
did we had some poor reliability and it impacted customers negatively. We've got to focus on that. So how do we do that, right? Here's the priority and how we're going to do it. It's these three, four, five initiatives. Here's the role you can play in terms of a leadership role, but here's a supportive role you can play as well.
Mm.
This is going to take the lead, and we need you as a department maybe to take a secondary type role and support them in their mission to restore credibility with the customer. So I know I'm speaking more generally about it, but you need to understand how you fit as an executive and how your department fits within the whole construct of the company and the organization.
Awesome. Well said, Greg. Thank you. Now, you talked about the Chicago story.
Yeah.
I want you to talk about another story now. So you now become a VP of smart metering during a challenging time with customer sentiment and employee morale trending downwards. What did you do? And what strategies do you use in these situations?
Well, can I say that the company had hired me to run electric operations? I'm I'm about a year into it, maybe a little bit less. My The president of the company calls me in my office, calls me on the telephone and says, hey, hey, Greg, make some small talk. How's it going, et cetera. And then says, hey, Greg, we want you to run smart meter operations. And this silence that you're hearing right now is exactly what happened on the phone. I was like, come again, Chris? What did you just say? He started laughing. He says, Greg, we need you to run smart meter. I said, Chris, you hired me to run electric operations. He said, yeah, I know. But he says, have you read the top fold of the San Francisco Chronicle every day for the last month? He says, we've been on the headline on the top fold of the Chronicle for the last 28 days. He says, we need to get off the top fold of the front page, okay? We've done some serious damage and hurt our credibility with customers. And you know what? We need some new leadership on the team. Long story short, never thought I'd be, I mean, I told him at the time, Chris, I run operations. I don't know a lot about meters or smart meters. He said, it's not about that. He said, it's about leadership, man. You know that. And he was right. Right. So I inherited the team. I led it for a year, but we had to make a lot of changes. And so here it is. It was a soiled reputation with customers. The budget was overspent. This was a $2.5 billion project.
Wow.
And more than 50% of the meters, about 50% of the meters were installed, but the budget was already spent. I think almost 70% of the budget was already spent. So they were over budget. They damaged the reputation with customers. I mean, it was a pretty horrible situation. So now I said, all right, now I know why you wanted some change there. It's kind of how I looked at many assignments over the years. When you inherit a new department, right, you kind of level set. You do an assessment. Okay, where are things at? Where are things at in terms of organizational structure, people? Do you have the right talent on the team? Do you need new skills? You know, we're literally taking stock. What's the current situation? Evaluating. Then it's getting clear from the boss on where do you want to go? What are the goals? What do you expect from me? A year from now, 2 years from now, what do you expect in terms of results, right? Targets, metrics, etc. And now what do you have? You have a gap, right? You got where you want to go and where you're currently at. So what do? You put an implementation plan together, an action plan on how to get there. And part of that then is, again, making sure you have the right people on the team, the right organization structure that will allow you to leverage all those skills and abilities to execute. And then it's putting a strategic and tactical plan together, right? An operational plan that you can execute. And I hope we get to talk about it because execution to me is the key to success. You must learn how to execute. It's the most elusive skill out there. But once you know how to implement, how to execute, how to get things done, let me tell you, that's what impresses people in organizations. And that's what impresses the investors. You've got to be able to get things done. You got to know how to execute because there's a lot of obstacles in the way of doing that. So that's kind of how I approach, right? It's that gap assessment, putting together an action plan or implementation plan, and then it's all about execution and putting a governance structure in place, right? It's a series of leadership meetings and project management meetings, et cetera. But when you're managing, right, $100 million project, $1 billion project, a couple of $1 billion, you've got to have good governance processes in place in order to effectively execute and manage that so you can bring it in on budget, bring it in on scope and schedule, right? And deliver for customers, et cetera. So those are some of the keys that I've found over the years.
Awesome. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more on the execution. And I actually have, one of my artwork above my head says execution because I'm a big believer in it. I feel like a lot of people write great strategies, but they fail to implement it and they fail to execute. And you have to go out and execute that strategy that you put together. Now, again, question back to you is, what fails people from actually executing their strategy, Greg?
Yeah,
What holds them back?
Pardon me?
What holds them back? Like, is it the sense of fear? Is it too much risk? Like, what is it? Like, why don't people properly execute their strategies?
So execution is not for the faint of heart.
Yes.
It's hard because what happens when you try to implement, right? When you're in a meeting and you're trying to review all the action items, okay, did we get this done? Somebody answers, no, we didn't get it done. Well, why not? And they provide all kinds of reasons. Okay. Then you get in the meeting next week and they provide more reasons why it didn't get done. And the next meeting after that, more excuses of why things didn't get done. How long are you going to put up with it?
That's right.
See, that's conflict. So when you're trying to execute, you run into conflict. And statistically speaking, Rob, anybody can look it up. Most people, they're conflict avoiders.
Yes.
They don't like dealing with conflict, right? So even as the boss, people don't want to they don't want to go to work to fight with people and to have conflict, right? They want to get along, cooperate, and get things done. We wish it was that easy though, right? It's not. So when you're trying to hold people accountable, when you're trying to deliver a result and execute on a task and hear and drive items to closure, and you hear excuses, it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's uncomfortable. And a lot of times leaders, people in leadership positions, they give people a pass. And I'm telling you right now, the key is don't give people a pass. You're going to say, well, you're being too hard on people. Look, you can have empathy. You can understand. There are definitely valid reasons why action items don't get done, right? Tasks don't get accomplished in a particular week. You run into obstacles. There's environmental conditions. There might be a condition on a job site that was at a customer job site. Something got in the way. They couldn't execute. They couldn't get it done. Okay. But week after week after week after week, right? So I found it effective. And this I believe is one of the greatest. I'll give HR a little credit here. One of the greatest organizational tools I have ever come across. I did a blog and a podcast on it. It's called the accountability ladder. Right?
I saw that. Yes.
Don't make excuses. Don't be a victim. Right? If you get something done, great. Tell them you got it done and here's how you got it done, and you'll keep delivering. If you didn't get it done, be honest. Say we failed on that item, we didn't get it done. Here's why. Now, here's the most important part. Here's what we're doing to get back on track. That's what leaders want to hear. That's what bosses want to hear. That you've already analyzed why it didn't get done, and you got a plan how to deliver next week. And when you come in next week and you deliver, they say, they got it. See, they weren't a victim. They didn't make excuses. They figured out a way to get through that obstacle, and now they accomplished the task.
That's right.
So, in that process, there's conflict avoidance, there's some uncomfortableness at times, but you've got to, as a leader, you've got to persist. You've got to be resilient. You have to develop some toughness.
Yeah.
And it's not about, don't get me wrong, I'm a passionate person, right? But it's not about yelling or screaming. You can be a very soft-spoken person, but drive the point home. Okay, I understand the task didn't get done. I'm expecting next week for you to get back on track. Anything standing in your way of getting it done next week, right? And you almost get them to commit. No, I think I can resolve that issue, and we can be back on track next week. Great. Let me know if you need any support in getting right. If you need any more resources or anything like that, there's a way you can talk through that with someone and make sure that they understand you've got their back.
That's
that
right.
you're going to support them. You're going to give them the resources they need to execute.
Absolutely. Again, I couldn't agree with you more. And you got to have that tough skin, and you know that you're not always out there to, not everyone's going to always like you, but you also have a job to do for the organization. So I totally agree. It's holding people accountable. So having said that, we talked about difficult decisions. So transitions are always, a difficult decision to make in life, especially when it involves your family, right? So Greg, I know you've been through this, and what were the key points that you decided to transition into a major utility on the other side of the border?
Yeah. Well, for me, I've always valued, my career, and I never really knew what ultimate position I wanted to have right at the end of my career. I kind of evaluated it along the way, and it would almost be my advice to people. And once I got to a certain position, and I kind of inherited that responsibility,
Hmm.
right? I developed a fondness of it, right? Of being in a leadership position where I could influence a result, right? Or affect a result, or help people on their professional development in their career. And if I could do that on a larger scale, I wanted to do it more. So I was always someone that was a little bit more hungry for more responsibility, right? And when an opportunity presented itself, it was hard for me to turn down. Let me tell you, it's not easy to pull your family across the country and then into another country. Right now, when I made the transition to Ontario, my kids were grown at that point. They didn't have to come with me. I was much of the time was on my own. My wife was with me as well. Um, but it wasn't like moving an entire family to a new country. But I will tell you, and recruiters will tell you too. Typically, the reasons why somebody doesn't move from one company to another, or right great distances, maybe from one country to another, it's typically family reasons that hold them back in the end, right?
That's right.
And that's not bad. That's not bad, right?
Yep.
Your family is a if it's not, it should be a critical priority for you. It is for me. It always was. But right, I dragged my family across the country, and then even my wife up to Ontario for a little while, which I loved. And you know what? The more we kind of did that, it was fulfilling. You embark on a new adventure almost, right? it
That's right.
was it was a new journey, and it felt exhilarating at times, right? A new opportunity. So it was both the career opportunity, right, and an aspiration to potentially move up and have a bigger impact. But it was also, for me, it turned out to be, exploring new cultures and new geographies and new people. And I loved my time in all the places we were, certainly from a career perspective. And
Awesome.
that's all with all the ups and downs as well. It wasn't all rosy.
Oh, of course. And it just shows that, you're also I take it you're a leader at home too, and you got your family to follow you. So that's a great thing, Greg. And we loved having you here in Ontario, and you did a lot of great things for Hydro One while you were there. And again, that's why I'm here talking to you today. I really admire the work that you do and the leadership traits that you have. So kudos to you there. Now, I also want to talk to you about this particular question over here. So I had a VP once, Greg, and I was talking to him about getting some career advice and how he hires his team, etc. And he told me that he always hires people that he can trust on his team, and people who don't really challenge him so he can, I guess, run his agenda the way he wants to. And I've seen your blogs about challenging and challenging uh, your superior, etc. And I understand challenging. People look at it in different ways, but when I say challenging, if you're protecting a star on your team, if you believe in something as a young leader, I always advise people to don't be afraid to challenge your superior or your boss, as long as it's in a respectful manner and you're doing it in a professional manner. There's nothing wrong with it. But it is a controversial topic where people are scared to challenge their boss because they're afraid of the reprimand. And I always hear, "Oh, I'm gonna lose my job. I'm gonna get fired." So I wanted to get your take on this, and what are your thoughts around, you know, building that team? Are you looking for building, you know, people who you have full control over, or are you okay with people challenging you? What's your take on this topic?
Yeah, there's a lot packed in there. You know, you you don't always inherit a team. You mean when you inherit a team, you don't know necessarily, right, the characteristics of those people. You've seen them on paper, but they just became automatically the team that works for you. You inherited your direct reports. You
That's right.
can't trust them yet, and they don't trust you. Trust is built over time, right?
Yes.
Um, as a leader, though, I believe it's incumbent upon you at the outset you're in the leadership position. It's up to you to extend the olive branch to people, right? To your team and say, look, here's who I am. This is what I believe in. These are the principles I believe in. This is how I manage. This is how I lead. It's what I believe in. Here's my expectations of you, right? This is a certain department that provides a certain service. Here's my specific expectations. Then I turn it around and I kind of surprise them and I say, what do you expect of me as your new boss, your new leader? And for a while, it's always silent, right? Really? You're asking us? Expect it? Yeah, because it's a two-way relationship, isn't it? Look, I've had one of the best things a leader can do is ask for feedback. And Rob, do you know how many bosses never ask for feedback?
A lot.
Somehow they think they're all knowing, they're omniscient, right? What, just because you attain the leadership position, now you know everything and you can't learn? We're all human.
Yes.
We can learn. Most of the positions that I kind of was in over the years, right, or I was promoted within, or I inherited, the people who worked for me, they had a lot more years of experience than I had. They knew the company better. They knew the work process better technically. They were smarter technically, right? But I was hired for my managerial and leadership skills, right, to achieve overall objectives of the department. So I think it's a healthy respect you have to show for people. And you should, what do you expect from me as a boss, right? And a lot of times they'll say, great, I'm glad you asked. Hey, we expect you to support us, to listen to us, our ideas. We've been here a long time.
Yeah.
We know how this place works, right? And we know how to get things done, right? And they'll rattle off a bunch of them. And I'll say, that's excellent. You're building a relationship right off the start. You're building trust now, right?
Yes.
And then they've given you, you've given them, and they've given you the opportunity to build trust because you told each other what you expect and what you believe in. Now you can deliver for them and they can deliver for you. And once you start doing that with each other, now you build trust, right? They say, wow, he came in and said this. He's doing exactly what he said he was going to do in that meeting, remember? Right? Now you're talking about it almost as a team. And now I want to deliver for him or her, right? I believe in them. So you're building trust, you're building credibility, you're building a relationship, and you're starting to work effectively with each other. Now we all know that doesn't happen with every employee, that every one of your direct reports, right? There's always a challenge.
That's right.
And every team I inherited, right, there were a few changes. Now, sometimes they were just, hey, look, I don't think you're the right fit. We need these certain skills in the job. And I think you'd be better off in this other job over here. And you'd work with another department and maybe get them transferred there or whatnot. And you'd bring somebody on the team that was maybe a better fit, that had the right skills, et cetera. You know, and then on the negative side, Rob, sometimes you're going to have a case where someone just doesn't want to kind of play ball, right?
That's right.
They want to push back. They want to be the person who's always contradictory. They don't want to play along. You know, you don't embarrass them. Then you have the coaching sessions and you say, hey, look, I'm trying to work with you here. This is the way we're going. I need you to get on board. If you don't want to, right, then you're essentially self-selecting off the team, right?
Yeah.
And so I can't have you on the team. So I'll help you find other opportunities somewhere else, either within the company or somewhere else if you want to do that, right? So you're going to run into that inevitably. If you're a manager and a leader long enough with people reporting to you, you're going to run into the bulk of the people who want to do well for you and you want to do well for them. You're going to have a few maybe exceptional star performers, and you're going to have a couple people on the other end who don't want to play ball, so to speak. So
that's right. Now let's say, Greg, that you didn't inherit the team and you're building a team. Now, you're in that executive level and you want to hire your leaders, reporting to you. How do you choose those leaders? Like, what's your criteria in terms of when you're hiring a leadership team?
yeah. So the first thing I'll say is, as you're thinking about the team, think about the organizational structure at the same time. To me, it's iterative. It's not like you pick the people first or you pick the structure first. I mean, much of the time you inherit a team of people and a structure, and you have to assess it.
That's right.
And now you've got to start to think about, all right, what does the boss expect of me? They said, here's what we need to deliver on over the next couple of years. So now you can start to think of, all right, what's the most effective structure that's going to help me deliver those results? And who are the best people? What kind of talent is that? What kind of skills? And do I have that on the existing team? So you're thinking about structure and the people at the same time.
Hmm.
And you're thinking about the skills they have or they don't have, and do you need to make changes? And to me, you make those changes, I typically say within the first 6 months, if you're going to make changes, you make structural changes and you make people changes. Say, here's the most effective structure. It may be going from a decentralized autonomous organization to a more centralized or functional organization, right? And maybe you do that to standardize and get more efficiencies out of the work group. Or maybe, there's always the question of, should you have centralized or decentralized organization? I don't think it's an either or. I think the current situation and the timing kind of dictates what you need. I've worked in both. Sometimes you have a functional organization and you've got a lot of standardization, and maybe you need more innovation. So now you might say, we're going to decentralize because we need some fresh ideas. We're going to create a different organizational structure and give more decentralized control to people so they can develop some new innovative ways to deliver for customers, right? And develop new work processes, et cetera. And we'll develop that culture of innovation. And then maybe after a few years, we'll transition back to more functional organization, et cetera, right? So those are the kinds of things you got to think about. But early on in your tenure, first 6 months, you should make people changes and structural changes. And I'll tell you, I've done a lot of reading on leadership. I've read so many leadership books over the years. I mean, everything from, right, Jack Welch, who was an icon in the industry, to one I'm reading right now, right? I'm reading Jocko Willink's The Dichotomy of Leadership.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Right, former Navy SEAL.
Yeah.
Um, they all have different perspectives on what leadership is and what it should be and how it should change and evolve. So I love learning all of those different leadership aspects and applying them to all kinds of situations, that you may run into. So
Awesome. Thank you, Greg. So I was reading your blog when it came out 4 years ago, as I was following you. And I love the part about managing up and don't kiss ass, because as someone who refuses to do this throughout his life, and I never liked that. So it was very refreshing to see that, Greg, and to hear that from somebody at your level. So how should young leaders or any leaders manage up versus having to kiss someone's ass?
yeah, I don't think anybody really, look, the reality is the ass kissing part happens, right? People have always been to some extent politically correct. They like to curry favor with the boss because they think it'll get them a promotion, right? I never really liked those people in the workplace. Because to me, I was brought up on merit, in a meritocracy. Everything you get, you should earn, right? You should deliver
Yeah.
results for people and results for the organization, and you should earn that promotion. So in an organization, however, right, you do need to understand it's an organizational structure and hierarchy. There's always going to be a boss, no matter where you're at. Even when you're the CEO, right, you still got bosses. It's the board of directors.
Right.
There's always someone you got to answer to. And even the board and the CEO, who do they have to answer to? They got to answer to investors, right? And customers and shareholders. So there's always a boss to answer to. So I would say this: be respectful of that boss-subordinate relationship. Recognize that you do report to someone. Show them the respect that position deserves, right? Now, if they're a jerk and they treat you like a jerk, then they don't deserve any respect. But you're not necessarily giving them as a person respect. You're showing the position respect. Okay, you hold that position. Tell me what you expect from me, right? I want you to be clear with me on what are the results you expect, what are the behaviors, right, the company and you expect from me, and what I can deliver, me and my department can deliver. So that's critical, right? Sharing expectations, asking the boss. And look, every boss wants a team that can deliver. you make the boss look good or look bad, so to speak, right? If you don't deliver, why wouldn't you want to make your boss look good? I mean, in the end, isn't that going to maybe put you in a potentially promotable position, right?
That's right.
When that opportunity comes up and they think of who's ready, are they going to think of the person who consistently delivers results for them time and time again? Or the one that gave them a face full of crap and always made excuses for not getting things done? Who's going to get the job, right? I mean, it's kind of obvious, right?
Yes.
So, so make the boss look good, deliver for them. You're not being a you're not sucking up to the boss, right? You're not kissing up to the boss. You're being respectful. You're delivering for them. You're delivering for the company. The company hired you and gave you this responsibility to deliver results for them so that they could deliver a good product or service to customers and afford the opportunity for shareholders to earn a good return. That's why you're hired, right? In each of you that a company hires, you have a specific responsibility and accountability to deliver for the company. And that's all you're doing. You're dedicated, you're committing to that responsibility, and you happen to work for a boss, right? That gives you direction on where you need to go and how you need to get things done. It does, sometimes I've talked about it on past blogs. I've had, I think, 19 different bosses.
Wow.
Not all of them, most of them were, I would say, good bosses. Some were great. I've had some bad bosses as well. I've had some bullies. And
Mhm.
you know what? The important thing is, number one, if you work long enough in industry, you're going to run into all of them. Believe me, you will.
Yes.
Learn something, learn a lot from each of them. I learned just as much of what not to do, Rob, from bad bosses
Yes.
as I did from the what I learned to do well from the good bosses. I tell my daughters today, they're both in the corporate world, right? They work for big corporations
Nice.
and they bring home stories. And I said, even if you didn't like what the boss did today or what they said or how they said it to you in a meeting or if they embarrassed you, I said, log it away right here or write it down, keep a diary. And you remember when you're in their job, when you have their position, when you're in a position of leadership, you know not to manage and lead that way. You can do better. You can be better, right?
Absolutely. No, that's a great message, Greg. And I couldn't agree with you more there. And everybody teaches you something in life. And I think it's great to actually learn that and take it away and not implement it if you don't like to be treated poorly.
Sure.
Just switching now a little bit to a different topic. I want to talk about your your speaking skills. So knowing myself again, I've seen a lot of executives, give presentations, and again, for me, you were one of the on the top tier in terms of the speaking abilities. So, what is the best way to overcome your fear or insecurities as a public speaker, and like, how should you know your superior? Like, sorry, what's again? Let's go back to the fear part. How do you overcome that fear or insecurities when you're doing public speaking?
Yeah. I, it's a topic I love talking about because I'm passionate about public
Yeah.
speaking. Um, early on, there's three keys to public speaking, and they might seem obvious, but people don't always adhere to them. Number one, know your audience.
Mhm.
Who's in the audience? Is it technical people? Is it managerial people? Is it finance people? Are they management people? Are they union employees? Are they workers? Who are they? What is their knowledge level? Right? When you know your audience, you will gear your speech to that audience. You won't talk above them. You won't talk below them. You will talk to what you believe their level of knowledge is about the subject you're speaking of. And that brings me to number two when it comes to effective public speaking. Know the topic that you're speaking about. Why would you ever get up in front of a group and talk about a topic that you're not knowledgeable in? you're going to be found out in a few minutes.
Yes.
They're going to know that you're talking about something superficially, and there's no depth there, right? Because you haven't explored that content. You haven't done research. You haven't done study. You don't have experience. And I've seen people at times, they seem like they struggled through a talk and they didn't really have a lot of content. It wasn't their area of expertise. So speak about a topic that you're knowledgeable in, right?
Mhm.
That you have a lot of experience in. So that's the second one. And the third one is practice, practice, practice. That gets you over your fear. So I listened to one of your podcasts as well, and you talked about getting over fear with one of your clients, and how you get through that, or driving people out of their comfort zone, right? So it was a college professor, an undergraduate engineering college professor, imagine that, who gave advice one day that I never forgot. And he said, Kevin McDermott, he was one of my industrial engineering professors. He said, if you learn to speak well, right, public speaking in front of others, and to write well, technically, even as engineers, right? If you do those two, you'll go far in your life and your career, no matter what vocation you choose.
Mhm.
And no truer words were spoken. So when I got my first job, I'm 21 years old now, I'm an engineer in my first company. My first boss, Dominic Ficini, he got me involved in a group in the company called the Speakers Bureau. He
Right.
said, hey, Greg, in this job, if you want to become a manager one day like me, right, and move up, and who knows, maybe you'll be the president one day, right? You have to learn how to speak in front of people. You have to learn to inspire people and influence them, right? If you're a good communicator, you can really lead people and inspire them along the way. And I think you should join this company's speakers bureau. So I looked into it and I checked it out. I called the coordinator, the director at the time, and I got involved. And boy, did I bite off more than I could chew. I didn't have any experience in public speaking, right? So if you're young and you have the opportunity, join Toastmasters.
Yes.
If you have an internal company speakers bureau, join it. Even if you're uncomfortable, right? Face your fear early on, because the only way you get good at public speaking is practice, practice, practice. I bet you I've delivered thousands of speeches in my lifetime now, right? And early on, I was probably terrible at it. I probably said and stumbled and all kinds of things my way through speeches. And guess what? Unless you're naturally gifted, and some people have the gift of gab, most people do not, you're all going to stumble your way through it.
That's right.
So you've got to practice and you've got to put yourself out there. So here I am, right? I'm a young 20-something-year-old and I'm going out to various business groups and I'm telling them about the company. So the company didn't just send me out there. This brings me back to one of the keys. They educated me. They said, here's what our company does. Here's the products we offer, the services we provide. Here's the facilities that we have. Go out and talk to business groups, Kiwanis clubs, Lions clubs, et cetera, and they want to hear about this topic. So here's the content. Do the research, review it, learn it, research on your own, and go out and deliver the presentation. And I did. It forced me to learn about topics that I did not know about previously, right? So I developed the content knowledge. I started to understand the audience, right? These business groups of who I was speaking to. And I practiced over and over and over again. And ultimately, I got so comfortable with it, I enjoyed being on stage and doing it, right? And it's just something that I developed a passion around. So I love it. And if I can teach, if I can over the next, who knows, 10, 15 years of my consultancy or this youth leadership summit that you invited me to, right?
That's
If I
right.
can impart some of that knowledge and experience to younger people, I would love to see them flourish, because who doesn't love a passionate speaker on stage, right? You're riveted by every word they say, right? You want to follow them. You come out of the conference and you're like, let's go get them, right? Because they pump
Yes.
up, right? You want to follow them. So being an effective public speaker is such an important and such a great skill to have. You will influence people and you will lead people better if you have those communication skills.
I couldn't agree more, and that's why I'm excited for the event, Greg, to learn even more from you. So, again, I think that's a great thing. sharing that knowledge and teaching the young folks, because that's one of the things I hear from a lot of people is they're afraid to speak up in meetings and they're afraid to speak in front of a big crowd, right? It's always that fear that's holding them back. And I love what you said. Just go out there, practice. And for me, I always say, be comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
That's what gets you over the hurdle.
You got to face that fear. The statistics say that people actually fear public speaking more than they fear death. Could you imagine?
I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
So before we wrap this up, we've come to the segment I like to call the rapid fire questions. So I'm
Oh
going to
boy.
ask a series of questions, Greg, and the first thing that comes to mind, you can talk about it, and we'll get through some of these questions rapidly. So
Okay.
starting off, what is your message to young folks out there who like chasing titles?
Yeah. Do your job well, and people will recognize you. Don't worry so much about the title, because the best way to get promoted to the next job is to do your current job really, really well.
Nice. What kept you up the most at night as an executive?
That dreaded call that maybe there was a serious incident or someone lost their life, right? As you know, in the business we were in,
Yeah.
People worked with on a hazardous product potentially, right, in hazardous conditions, and that very real possibility of serious injury or death could occur and did occur. And I dreaded getting a phone call, and I did get a couple over my time. It's never easy. And the next few weeks after that, in seeing the loved ones and family members of maybe somebody who didn't make it right, who fell on the job and either were seriously injured or died on the job. Imagine then dealing with family members, right?
That's right.
And owning that responsibility right, that was part of your organization where that happened, right? It's one of the most difficult things you ever have to deal with.
Yeah, I bet that's very tough. Um, how do you become, well, we talked about this. What is leadership presence?
Leadership presence. Yeah, I liken it to, I would say, executive presence as well, right? It's demonstrating confidence in your abilities and who you are. It's demonstrating content knowledge, again, right? When you come into a room or you're speaking to your staff, even, right? Make sure you do your homework. Make sure you've done the review. Make sure you've done the analysis. You've read the material. You've done the analysis. You've done some research. You're knowledgeable in it, so you can talk from a very credible perspective, and people will be impressed by that you did the work, right?
That's right.
And so they'll follow you more because they know you're a credible leader. So
Awesome. So what is leadership excellence?
leadership excellence is organizing and influencing a team of people to achieving something they never thought was possible. Extraordinary results, right? Something they never thought they could achieve. All of a sudden, the team came together and achieved it.
Amazing, Greg. And lastly, where can people find you?
Oh, easy. GregCorrali.com. That's my website. And it's funny too, I put it out everywhere. They can send me an email, leadership@gregcorrali.com. They can check out my website. I've even given out my phone number. I don't mind. Contact me any way you'd like to contact me, and I'd love to help.
Awesome. We'll put that information on this podcast as well. So again, I wanted to thank you so much, Greg, for being with me today. I really enjoyed the conversation with you and got to learn even more about you and your experiences and your great knowledge. And for all the people out there listening, thank you very much. If you've got any questions for Greg, you can put it in the box below, in the comment box below, or you can reach out to Greg directly. And again, thank you, Greg, very much. And we'll see you guys on the next episode. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.